1 year ago. The Tibetan Mastiff clawed restlessly at everything around it. The cramped space inside the tent made it feel stifled and uneasy. Its body was restless, unable to stay still. It chewed on everything in sight, trying to release the tension. It was about to give birth. The most dangerous moment of its life was drawing near. But fortunately, after an hour of struggling through the pain, it successfully gave birth. The faint sighs echoing in the tent sounded like a silent thank you to life itself. A few weeks before the dog gave birth, a woman on a road trip happened to come across it lying motionless by a desolate mountain roadside. It was a Tibetan Mastiff, large and imposing, yet in a heartbreaking state. Its thick fur, which should have been the pride of its breed, had turned into a burden. The tangled matted coat was clumped together with mud, dust, and small bits of trash. In some areas, the fur had fused into large, filthy mats like old rugs stuck to its skin, which was inflamed and sore in several spots. Its entire body seemed weighed down, as if it were carrying stones. The woman pulled over and hesitantly approached it. The dog was huge, and its rugged appearance could have frightened anyone. But its eyes told a different story, tired, resigned, and tinged with hopelessness. She crouched down, gently offering a few pieces of sausage in her hand. At first, it didn't react at all. It just lay there, breathing heavily, too exhausted, or perhaps too numb, to care about food. Only after a long time of coaxing, her voice soft like speaking to a wounded child, did the dog slowly lift its head, tentatively lick the food, and finally nibble a few bites reluctantly. At that moment, she knew she couldn't leave it behind. Despite its filth, despite the likely fleas crawling under its fur, she couldn't ignore those eyes. She opened the trunk, laid out an old blanket, and returned to call it. The dog hesitated for a moment. Then, as if it understood her kindness, it gathered the last of its strength and climbed into the car, one heavy step at a time. She shut the door, started the engine, and the dog began a new journey. No one knew what lay ahead, but from that moment on, it was no longer alone. After bringing the dog into her car, she didn't drive far. Instead, she stopped at a quiet open field nestled among deserted hills. The sun was still gentle and the wind blew steadily. She opened the trunk and took out a grooming kit she always carried on her journeys. She had rescued stray dogs before. Today, it was this large Tibetan Mastiff's turn. She gently tied a leash around its neck, not to restrain it, but simply to keep it close. Thankfully, the dog didn't resist. It seemed to understand that someone was finally here to help. She started trimming from the back, where the fur was thickest and most tangled. The matted fur was like coarse cloth clumped with mud, dry grass, tiny thorns, and sand. Every pull of the scissors required strength. Her hands ached as she worked, and each thick clump of fur fell to the ground like pieces of an old rug. She carefully examined the skin underneath with each cut. Luckily, despite the severe matting, the dog had no major injuries, no wounds, no infections. Its skin was just red and irritated from being trapped under the heavy coat. Every now and then she paused to pat its back, letting it rest and reassuring it with a soft touch. The dog sat quietly, only exhaling heavily when she tugged too hard near the skin. What seemed like a simple task took more than 3 hours. She clipped, untangled, and cleaned through layers of thick fur until sweat soaked through her shirt. When she finally finished, the pile of discarded fur was as high as a small campfire. Looking back at the dog, she could hardly recognize it. It looked neater, lighter, though still thin. It was no wonder it had moved so heavily before. Its coat had been like a heavy sheepskin rug stuck to its body. She cleaned up the fur, washed her hands with fresh water, and pitched her tent beside the dog. That night, in the middle of nowhere, she and the Tibetan Mastiff began a new journey. No one knew what lay ahead, but at least for now, they had each other. It had been exactly 1 year since the first Tibetan Mastiff was adopted by her. A full year of wandering through highland regions in her small vehicle. She continued her journey, one with no fixed destination, guided only by emotion and the encounters along the way. Perhaps fate had its own plan. There was something uncanny about it. Animals seemed to have an instinct, a sixth sense, guiding them to places of safety, toward people they could trust. That early morning, in the midst of a fierce snowstorm sweeping across the Tibetan plateau, just as she was preparing to start her car and leave, she heard a faint sound near the back of the vehicle. Stepping out into the cold, she discovered a large black Tibetan Mastiff curled up beside her rear tire, its entire body blanketed in thick snow. Its black fur was almost unrecognizable beneath the icy layers. There was no collar, no sign of ownership. Perhaps it had gotten separated from its owner somewhere out on the vast plains, where locals often raise mastiffs to guard livestock against wolves. Without hesitation, she opened her portable tent and gently led the dog inside. Its body was freezing, layers of snow clinging to its matted fur. Using towels, her hands, and even her breath, she slowly brushed away the snow and tried to warm it up. By the second morning, the snowstorm had passed and the skies began to clear. But something troubled her. The dog hadn't rested at all. All night it had been pacing in circles within the small space of the tent, round and round, as if haunted by something. It didn't bark or howl, just kept walking, confused and lost. Its eyes were bloodshot, dazed, and unfocused. She feared it might be suffering from nerve damage due to prolonged exposure to cold. Or perhaps it had an illness she couldn't identify. Without delay, she packed up and decided to take it to the nearest veterinary clinic, a small facility nearly 30 kilometers away. Through slippery roads and muddy trails. But the dog was massive, easily weighing close to 60 kilograms. She struggled greatly to get it into the car. Upon arrival, she had to ask 2 men to help carry the dog up the stairs to the second floor of the clinic. The vet began immediate examination. First, they shaved away the dirty, matted fur, which smelled of damp mold and neglect. Clumps of hair fell to the floor like discarded rugs. Beneath the fur, its skin was pale and inflamed in patches. But thankfully, there were no open wounds or signs of infectious disease. Its eyes were blood red, likely from exhaustion and cold. When the vet opened a can of dog food, it devoured it in seconds, then went on to eat 2 more. The hunger it had held back for days now poured out all at once. They sewed a new thick padded coat just for him to protect against the returning cold. She stood nearby, gently stroking its back, still anxious. But finally, after all the tests were done, The vet confirmed there were no major health issues. Wrapped warmly in its new coat, the dog was taken back to her vehicle. This time, their destination was the animal rescue center she had visited before, a place where lost and broken animals found safety, care, and a second chance at life. Her journey continued, and another life had just been pulled back from the thin edge between life and death.